A small diner on a Berlin side street. Winter night cold enough to cut through skin. A man sat alone at a corner table, a steaming bowl of soup before him. The door open, wind rushing in. A woman in a worn coat carrying a small girl entered, looked around briefly, then lowered her head to leave. But the little girl stopped, her wide eyes locked on the soup bowl. The man froze, his spoon suspended in midair. The woman whispered, "Come on, Emma, don't stare." He looked down at the child and said quietly, "If she's hungry, there's enough for both." She stared in shock, lips trembling. "I can't accept." He replied softly, "You already did, when she looked at my plate." Daniel Ross was 35 years old, a hard-working single father scratching out a living as an electrician in Berlin, his entire world revolving completely around his 9-year-old son Leo and the memory of the wife he'd lost. He'd lost his beloved wife Maria to aggressive breast cancer 3 devastating years ago. And since that terrible day, every single morning had been about survival, about pushing through grief, about making absolutely certain that Leo had everything he needed: nutritious food, proper school supplies, warm clothes, and most importantly, unwavering love and stability. Daniel worked brutal double shifts whenever he possibly could, repairing faulty electrical systems in old, crumbling apartment buildings throughout Berlin's working-class neighborhoods, coming home physically exhausted every night, but always making time to help Leo with his mathematics homework and tuck him into bed with stories about his mother. Life was simple, sometimes painfully so, but it was meaningful and honest. Every evening after finishing his late shift around 8 p.m., he had a comforting habit of stopping at Old Corner Diner, a small, unpretentious family restaurant near the electrical repair shop where he worked, run by an elderly couple named Klaus and Clara, who'd become like surrogate parents over the years. That particular freezing evening, heavy snow fell steadily outside the steamed windows, and the diner was nearly empty. Just Daniel nursing a bowl of potato soup, the soft, melancholic sound of a radio playing old German folk songs, and the comforting warmth of simple food and human connection. When the waitress Clara was methodically clearing tables around 9 p.m. to prepare for closing, the front door suddenly opened with a gust. Bitter cold wind rushed violently in, carrying swirling snowflakes and the sharp, biting promise of a dangerous winter night. A young woman stumbled inside carrying a small child wrapped in inadequate layers, her hair disheveled and damp from snow, her thin coat clearly worn through and insufficient for this weather, her pale face showing exhaustion, cold, and something that looked like desperation. She approached Clara hesitantly at the counter and asked in a small, embarrassed voice that Daniel could barely hear, "Excuse me, do you have any leftovers from today? Anything at all that you'd throw away? I can clean tables or wash dishes in exchange. Whatever you need." Clara's weathered face showed deep sympathy mixed with regret. "I'm so sorry, dear. We have to throw away what's left at closing. Health regulations are very strict. I truly wish I could help you." The woman nodded with sad understanding, her thin shoulders sagging under the weight of yet another rejection, another closed door. She turned slowly to leave, gently pulling her daughter's small hand toward the exit. But the little girl, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, stopped walking directly in front of Daniel's corner table, her large eyes fixed with absolute heartbreaking focus on his bowl of steaming potato soup, wide and bright with the kind of hunger that physically hurt Daniel to witness. Daniel carefully set down his spoon and called out before he could overthink it, "Miss, please wait a moment. Your daughter can sit here if she's hungry. Please." The mother turned back slowly, her expression showing a painful war between desperate hope and stubborn pride. We can't pay for food. I don't have any money right now." "Then let me," Daniel said simply, firmly, gesturing to the empty chair across from his small table. "Please sit, both of you." Clara looked surprised but smiled warmly with immediate understanding, and hurried to the kitchen to prepare another generous bowl of soup and some fresh bread. When the steaming soup was carefully placed before the little girl, she looked up at Daniel with solemn, serious eyes that seemed far too old for her young face and whispered with perfect politeness, "Thank you very much, mister." The mother sat rigidly upright in her chair, visibly fighting back tears of relief and shame. You really didn't have to do this for complete strangers. You don't even know us or our situation. Daniel met her tired eyes with deep understanding, born from his own struggles. I know that. But several years ago, someone once did exactly the same thing for me when I desperately needed it. This is just me passing that kindness forward, the way it should be. As the little girl ate slowly and carefully, clearly savoring every single precious spoonful like it might be her last meal, Daniel learned their basic story through quiet conversation. Anna Keller, 27 years old, and her daughter Emma, age 6, who watched everything with those two serious eyes. Anna had lost her assembly line job at Mueller Textiles factory just 2 weeks ago when the company had downsized dramatically, laying off 80 workers without warning or severance. She'd been formally evicted from their small apartment just yesterday morning for 3 months of unpaid rent she simply couldn't cover. They'd been sleeping in the city homeless shelter when space was available, but tonight it had been completely full. They literally had nowhere to go in this dangerous cold. Daniel listened quietly and attentively, not interrupting, not judging, not offering empty platitudes, just listening with the kind, focused attention of someone who genuinely understood struggle and loss. "We'll find something," Anna said, trying to sound hopeful. "A job will come through. It has to." Real witness detail. When Clara brought the final bill at the end of the night after they'd left, Daniel added a generous tip that was nearly as much as the meal and wrote on the receipt in his careful handwriting, "Merry Christmas to whoever you are, wherever you are. Keep fighting. Better days are coming." As Daniel drove home through the snowy streets to relieve his neighbor who was watching Leo, he couldn't stop thinking about those two faces. The mother trying so desperately hard to maintain dignity, and the little girl who'd looked at a simple bowl of soup like it was the most precious thing in the world. He knew that look. He'd worn it himself once. The next morning around 7 a.m., Daniel was driving his work van to an emergency electrical repair job at an apartment complex when he saw two heartbreakingly familiar figures huddled together at a bus stop. Anna and Emma, the mother desperately holding her daughter close against the biting morning wind that cut through their inadequate clothing. The little girl clutched a soaked, worn teddy bear that had clearly seen better days. Anna looked around with visible desperation in her eyes, as if searching frantically for options or solutions that simply didn't exist in her reality. Daniel immediately slowed his van and rolled down the passenger window. "It's you again. From last night." Anna jumped with startled recognition and started to stammer out an explanation or maybe an apology for existing, but Daniel simply said with gentle firmness, "Get in the van, please. It's warmer than out there and that wind is dangerous." They hesitated for only a brief moment before the brutal cold made the decision for them, and they climbed gratefully into the heated vehicle. In the van with the heater running at full blast and warm air finally reaching their frozen bodies, Anna slowly told Daniel their complete, heartbreaking story in a quiet voice. She'd worked at Mueller Textiles factory for 3 solid years, supporting Emma completely alone after the father, a man she'd never married, had simply disappeared when Emma was still a tiny baby, leaving no forwarding address, no contact information, no child support, nothing. When the factory had closed its doors permanently last month, she tried absolutely everything she could think of, applying to other factories, taking cleaning jobs, waitressing positions, retail work. But Berlin was expensive, and stable jobs were desperately scarce for a single mother with no higher education, no professional network, and gaps in her employment history. The city homeless shelter had helped when they could, but strict capacity rules meant they could only stay 3 consecutive nights at a time before having to leave for 72 hours to make room for others who needed beds. Emma hadn't attended school regularly in over 3 months now. Anna's eyes filled with deep shame as she admitted this painful truth. Daniel drove in thoughtful silence for several long minutes, turning something over in his mind, then made a decision that would fundamentally change all 4 of their lives forever. "I have a spare bedroom in my apartment," he said carefully, choosing his words. "My son Leo and we only use 2 of the 3 bedrooms since my wife passed. The third just sits empty, collecting dust. You could stay there just for a while until you find something stable and get back on your feet." Anna immediately, instinctively shook her head in automatic refusal. No, absolutely not. I can't accept that kind of generosity from you. It's far too much. It's not charity or pity, Daniel said firmly, needing her to understand. It's what people do when they actually remember what it feels like to desperately need help. When my wife Maria died, neighbors I barely knew brought food to our door for 6 straight months. A teacher at Leo's school quietly paid his field trip fees. A coworker covered my shifts when I could barely function. I'm not special or saint-like for doing this. I'm just not forgetting where I've been and who helped me climb out. That evening after Daniel finished work, Anna and Emma arrived at his modest 3-bedroom apartment with all their worldly possessions fitting into just 2 worn plastic shopping bags. Everything they owned in the world. Leo opened the door with natural childhood curiosity, looking at the 2 strangers standing in the hallway with his father. Leo, this is Anna and her daughter Emma. Daniel introduced them gently. They're going to be staying with us for a while, sharing our home. Leo studied them both seriously and thoughtfully for a long moment with his mother's perceptive eyes, then shrugged with the remarkably easy acceptance that only children seem to possess naturally. Okay, that's cool. Should I help set more plates for dinner then, Dad? That first dinner together was undeniably awkward, but somehow warm and real. 4 people sitting around a small kitchen table that had only seated 2 for years. The sound of hesitant conversation and occasional surprised laughter gradually filling the space that had been silent for so long. Anna absolutely insisted on helping with dishes afterward, and Daniel patiently showed her where everything was kept in the small kitchen. I'll leave and be out of your way as soon as I find steady work, she said quietly, not meeting his eyes, her voice full of determination. I promise we won't be a burden on you and Leo. Take your time finding the right job, not just any job, Daniel replied seriously. Emma needs real stability, not just constant change. You both do. Over the following days and weeks, a comfortable, natural routine developed organically between the 4 of them. Anna cleaned the apartment thoroughly, cooked nutritious meals for everyone, and helped Leo with his increasingly difficult homework while Daniel worked his long shifts. Emma slowly, gradually came out of her protective shell, laughing freely with Leo over silly cartoon shows and competitive board games. Daniel helped Anna painstakingly update her resume to highlight her skills, practice interview questions, and fill out dozens of job applications online. One evening, Daniel came home exhausted from work to find Anna teaching both children how to bake bread from scratch. Flour absolutely everywhere, covering every surface. All 3 of them laughing uncontrollably at the mess they'd created. He stood quietly in the doorway watching them for several long minutes, and for the first time in 3 long, painful years since Maria's death, his apartment felt like a genuine home instead of just a place where he and Leo existed in marked time. Real witness detail. That night, after the children were asleep, Daniel checked on them before going to bed himself and found Emma sleeping peacefully next to Leo in his bed. Both kids wrapped together in the same warm blanket, smiling contentedly in their sleep, like siblings who'd known each other their entire lives instead of just a few weeks. After about 2 weeks of this new living arrangement, neighbors in Daniel's apartment building began whispering and talking behind closed doors. The gossip started small and quiet, but grew steadily louder. That single father brought a strange woman into his home with his young son there. Living together unmarried with children in the house? Is that really appropriate? She must be taking advantage of his kind nature and loneliness. What kind of example is he setting for his boy? Daniel's direct supervisor at the electrical repair company, Herr Braun, called him into the cramped office one afternoon. Ross, I'm hearing some things, concerning things, about you housing some woman in your apartment. This company has a solid reputation in the community. We can't have employees whose personal lives create controversy or bad publicity. Keep your personal situation clean. Daniel said nothing in response, just nodded curtly and left the office, his jaw tight with suppressed anger. One evening around 7 p.m., Anna went out alone to interview for a waitressing position at a restaurant on the other side of the city, leaving Emma safely with Daniel and Leo, who were building an elaborate Lego castle together. On her way home after a disappointing interview where they'd said she was overqualified, code for too old and too poor, Anna was suddenly confronted aggressively on the street by Herr Schmidt, her former landlord, a bitter, angry man still furious about 3 months of unpaid rent. "You owe me money, Frau Keller," he shouted at her on the busy, crowded sidewalk, drawing stares from strangers. "Living for free while honest, hard-working people pay their debts. Probably living off some man now, yes? Spreading your legs for rent?" Horrified passers-by stared. Anna's face burned bright red with shame and humiliation. Daniel happened to be driving past in his work van on his way home from a late emergency repair job. He saw the confrontation, saw Anna's visible humiliation and distress, and immediately pulled over without thinking. He stepped between them calmly but with absolute firmness. "She owes you nothing tonight, Herr Schmidt. Your business with her ended when you illegally locked her out." The landlord sneered with ugly contempt. "You her lawyer, her boyfriend, her pimp?" "No," Daniel said with dangerous calm. "Just someone who's completely done being silent when people abuse and humiliate those who can't effectively fight back. She had a legal rental contract. You violated it by turning off the heat in the middle of winter, which is illegal. I know tenant protection law very well. Now leave her alone or I'll file a formal complaint." Schmidt muttered bitter curses under his breath, but walked away quickly, leaving Anna trembling visibly in the cold rain that had started falling. She completely broke down, crying on the sidewalk. "I'm so tired of being the person who always, constantly needs help from others. So tired of being weak and pathetic and dependent." Daniel gently put a steady hand on her shaking shoulder. "Then stop calling it weakness, Anna. Call it surviving against impossible odds. Call it starting over after life knocked you down. Call it being human. There's no shame in any of that." The very next day, Daniel was called unexpectedly to his supervisor's office again. "Someone posted photographs of you with that woman on social media," Herr Braun said coldly, showing his phone screen. "Our company doesn't need or want this kind of public attention. We can't have employees whose personal hobbies create controversy and speculation. It's bad for business." Daniel tried desperately to explain the truth. "I helped a homeless family in desperate need, a mother and child. That's all this is. Nothing inappropriate or improper is happening." "Then help yourself and your son. You're terminated, effective immediately. Clear out your locker." Daniel drove home in complete shock, unemployed for the first time in 15 years, his mind racing. When he arrived at the apartment, it was empty and quiet. On the small kitchen table was a handwritten note. "I can't let you lose everything because of us. We're leaving tonight. Thank you for everything you did. I'll find a way to pay you back someday when I can. Please don't worry about us. We'll be fine." Anna, she and Emma were completely gone. No trace left except that note. Daniel rushed immediately to the bus station, searching desperately through crowds. Not there, he checked the homeless shelter. They hadn't checked in. He called the diner. Clara hadn't seen them at all. He drove around for hours searching. While searching Anna's now empty room for any possible clue about where she might have gone, Daniel found a small handkerchief carefully placed on the bed. Emma's, with the letter L beautifully embroidered on it in colorful thread. She'd been secretly sewing it as a gift for Leo. He clutched it tightly, eyes burning with tears of frustration, worry, and loss. For 3 agonizing days, he searched everywhere he could think of while trying to find any new job. No sign of them anywhere. Then, exactly 1 week after they disappeared into the city, he saw an urgent news alert flash on his phone. Woman collapses at Central City Library. Young child found crying beside her. The attached photo showed paramedics loading Anna into an ambulance while a social worker held a sobbing Emma. Daniel dropped everything he was holding and ran to his van. The hospital emergency room was cold and sterile with harsh fluorescent lighting. Anna lay on a bed in a curtained area, hooked to an IV, unconscious from exhaustion, dehydration, and malnutrition. Emma sat in a plastic chair, clutching her teddy bear, tears streaming down her face silently. Daniel burst through the doors and immediately knelt beside the little girl. "Emma, it's me. You're safe now. I've got you." She threw her arms around his neck, sobbing. "She won't wake up. I tried and tried, but she won't wake up." She will, Daniel promised. The doctors are helping her. She's going to be okay. A nurse approached. Are you family? Yes, Daniel said without hesitation. I'm family. When Anna finally opened her eyes hours later, the first person she saw was Daniel sitting beside her bed, Emma asleep in his lap. Daniel, she whispered, her voice hoarse. I'm so sorry. You lost your job because of me. I couldn't let you sacrifice anymore. Anna, listen to me, though, he said gently but firmly. I didn't lose anything important. I lost a job. Jobs come back. But I found something I thought I'd lost forever. A reason to care about more than just survival. She started crying. I tried so hard, but everywhere I went, no one would hire me. No references, gaps in employment, a child to care for. Emma and I slept in the library for 3 days. I thought I could handle it. You don't have to handle everything alone, Daniel said. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You have us. Me and Leo. We're your family now, if you'll let us be. A different nurse entered the room, recognizing Daniel from somewhere. Wait, aren't you the guy from that viral video? The one sharing soup with the little girl? Daniel looked confused. What video? The nurse pulled out her phone and showed him. Someone had recorded his interaction with Emma at the diner that first night. The moment he'd invited them to eat, the kindness in his voice. It had been shared millions of times with the caption, "This is what humanity looks like." The video had sparked a movement. Strangers across Berlin had donated to a fund to help families like Anna's. The next day, Helen from Shelter 17 visited the hospital with news. The community raised money specifically for you both, enough for first and last month's rent, security deposit, and 3 months of living expenses. A fresh start. But there was more. A small restaurant owner named Klaus had seen the video and contacted Daniel. I lost my daughter to cancer 5 years ago. She was Leo's age. Watching you care for that little girl reminded me why we keep going. I'm opening a second location. I need a manager, someone who understands people. Interested? Daniel was speechless. Symbol of rebirth. Daniel, Anna, Leo, and Emma worked together to renovate a small space Klaus provided, turning it into Warm Meals Corner, a restaurant where anyone could eat, and those who couldn't pay could work or simply receive kindness. The wooden sign outside read, "Warm meals, no questions asked." Real witness detail at end of act. The first person they served for free was Herr Schmidt, Anna's former landlord, who'd recently lost his own apartment in his pride. Anna served him personally with grace. 1 year later, Warm Meals Corner had become a beloved neighborhood institution and gathering place, especially cherished during the cold winter holidays. Every Christmas Eve, the restaurant opened its doors completely free to anyone who needed a warm meal, friendly conversation, and the reminder that humanity and kindness still existed in the world. Helen from Shelter 17 visited one December evening and presented Daniel with a beautifully engraved award plaque, Community Hero of the Year, for showing us all what true kindness looks like. Daniel and Anna ran the thriving restaurant together as equal partners, in business certainly, and gradually in life, though they'd never formally defined or labeled what they were becoming to each other. Emma attended school regularly and successfully now, sitting beside Leo in every class, the two children inseparable like true blood siblings, finishing each other's sentences and protecting each other fiercely. The restaurant's walls were completely covered with framed photographs and heartfelt thank you notes from dozens of people whose lives had been fundamentally changed by a simple bowl of soup, a kind word, and the reminder that humanity and compassion still existed. One quiet evening after the dinner rush, a journalist came to interview Daniel for a major human interest story that would run in the city's largest newspaper. "Mr. Ross, why did you do it? Why help a complete stranger when you had your own serious struggles and responsibilities?" Daniel thought carefully for a long moment before answering honestly. "Because one winter night, a hungry little girl looked at my plate of soup, and in that single moment, I suddenly realized I had more than enough of everything. Not just food, enough heart, enough space in my home, enough love to share. We always have enough if we're actually willing to share it. That's the secret nobody talks about." Anna stood beside him behind the counter, and their hands found each other naturally, fingers intertwining. She added softly, her voice thick with emotion. He didn't just feed us that first night. He gave us back our dignity, our hope, our belief in humanity, our entire future. That's worth infinitely more than any amount of money could ever be. Final scene. Fresh snow fell softly, peacefully outside the large restaurant windows as the four of them, Daniel, Anna, Leo, and Emma, sat together at their favorite corner table after closing time, the warm, golden glow of string lights reflecting beautifully off their tired, happy faces. Emma leaned contentedly against Leo's shoulder, both kids exhausted and happy after helping serve food all evening. Anna rested her head naturally on Daniel's shoulder, finally at peace. Above the main doorway, a beautifully carved wooden sign made by Leo in his woodworking class read in careful letters, "Kindness starts with one plate and never ends with one meal." Outside on the snowy street, people passed by the glowing windows, some pausing to read the inspiring sign, others coming inside hopefully for warmth, food, and human connection. The beautiful cycle of kindness continued endlessly, expanding outward like gentle ripples on calm water, touching countless lives they'd never personally meet. Because Daniel had truly remembered what it meant to be hungry, to be desperately cold, to need help when nobody seemed to care. And in deeply remembering his own pain, he'd helped others remember their humanity too. That we're all just one moment, one choice, one simple plate of soup away from completely changing someone's entire world. That kindness isn't weakness. It's the strongest force in the universe. That home isn't where you live. It's who you choose to love. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to Strong Dad Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten.